I've completed more than 50 ultramarathon races, and along the way I heard some pretty hard lessons, which today I want to share with you. Today I'm sharing the 7 things I wish I knew before I start running ultramarathons and marathons. Hi, Simon here. Welcome to my channel. On this channel I share my adventure racing ultramarathon, mostly 100-mile ultramarathon, and I share some of the things I've learned along the way to help you get out there and have your own adventure. Today we talk about things I wish I knew before I start running to help you on your journey and to maybe skip some painful lesson that I had to learn. The first one is that running is for everyone. I think that's something that is limiting a lot of people into getting into running or marathon running or even ultra marathon. It feels when you don't do these things that, wow, running 100 miles is crazy. Only someone who's young and very fit can do these things. And it couldn't be further from the truth. If you go at an ultra marathon, you'll quickly realize that you have people of all ages, people of all body types, people of all levels of fitness. We're all in a different place when it comes to this journey in terms of getting fitter, getting healthier, but just having adventure. And related to that, it's a fairly non-competitive environment. The longer the race, the less it's competitive and the much more it becomes almost an adventure with people that are also racing at the same time. But it's not so much about finishing before someone else, it's about finishing potentially even together, helping each other, achieving more than you think you're capable of, and sometimes helping someone will help you have a better adventure, and of course being helped is always appreciated. Similarly, the people doing these sports, the community is very supportive, so you should never feel ashamed of your fitness, your body type, or the speed or the distance that you're doing. So it's not so much about doing more than other people, but rather doing more than what you could yesterday. The second thing I wish I knew is somewhat related, but also is diverging, is that there's a very low barrier of entry to get into running. It's very simple, you just need some shoes and you go running. If you run for 1 minute, if you run for 1 hour, if you run for 5 days, you're still a runner. But this is a little bit misleading because even though there's a low barrier of entry, mastering running is very difficult. Physically, it will take a lot of time for your body to adapt. It will take a lot of training, consistent training, good training to get your body used to running long distances. It's not something that will happen quickly. You need to be patient, you need to be expecting setbacks, and you need to be humble about the progress that you should do, because a common mistake is to be too ambitious, to go too hard, to start too quickly, and then getting injured. If you add on top of that, ultramarathon are very often trail races, sometimes in the mountain. There are skills that you need to learn much beyond just running itself. You need to have the appropriate gear, you need to have the proper running technique when you're on trail. And all of these skills, these kind of topic specific things, are very hard to master because every time you go racing you will face a new problem and you will learn how to solve it. Then you'll face something else, then you'll have blisters, then you'll have chafing, then you'll be sick, then you'll have diarrhea, then you'll be throwing up. And it seems that there's always something new to learn and something new to resolve. Because long distance running, the longer the race, the more unlikely things will happen. Typically bad things. And it becomes very much not having a perfect day, having the perfect race, everything went smoothly. But you become a problem solver. And the more experience you get, and unfortunately that takes time, but the more experience you get, the better you will become at problem solving on the spot. You'll be able to resolve very hard problem. But that's something that if it's your first, second ultramarathon or marathon, you will struggle. For example, if they lose your drop bag and you don't have a headlamp for the night, what should you do about that? There are solutions to every problem. And one thing that you can do besides just experience and taking time is to actually do a lot of research. And on this channel, what I try to do is I try to cover both topics that are hot topics, interesting things to talk about, but also the things that I believe are important but are not necessarily as glamorous. How to deal with wildlife, how to deal with blisters. These are very topic specific videos that will not necessarily be as interesting if you've never faced that problem, but I would say it's better to know how to deal with blisters before having those blisters in the middle of the race. So I'd suggest, of course, that you have a look both at my broader videos about how to make a training plan, how to have a strong mind game, but also to dive into these topic specific videos. And I'll put a link in the description below. Preparation for a race is very important. It's probably the most important thing. It's not the race itself. The race is almost like a celebration of all the training you've done. Now you're in a situation where you're able to race the race. That's the easy part. The tough part is the 3 months, 6 months, 1 year that you will spend training for that. And a common mistake, which unfortunately social media will kind of perpetuate that a little bit, is that there's this wrong or weird concept that more is better. More training, more mile, you become a better runner. And that's not true. There are people that have big ego that they want to show they train a lot and they never take rest, and that's great, I guess, but that's really not the appropriate way of training. There are smart ways to train, not just putting a bulk amount of work, but training smartly so that you have the best return on investment in the time that you're dedicating to training, that the effort you're putting are actually paying dividend, that you're becoming fitter, you're becoming a better runner. Also, your training is not just running. Resting is very important. That's when your body will become stronger. You have a strenuous workout, some rest so that your body can build back, then you can have a good workout afterwards. If you're always working out very hard every day, all the time, what you're really doing is that you're preventing your body from healing between these workouts. And in fact, the hard workout that you're doing, if you have the proper rest, you could have a better workout session because you have the energy for that, you have the muscle for that. If we compare, for example, people going to the gym and trying to have big muscle, they will rotate the muscle that they're training. They will have a leg day, they will have a chest day. You can see I'm not necessarily doing that myself. And it's because you can't just do chest day every day. You won't be able to have good workout. It's the same thing with running. If you run every day, all the time, very fast, it's just bad workout and you won't get as much benefit from your training. And it's so normal to be lost at first. Running, as I said, the barrier to entry is very simple. You just go running, and if you want to run longer, you will train more and you will run longer, and that will serve you well at first. But once you get into marathon, ultra marathon, that's when you start to have to structure your training. And your training should not only be running. Sure, running is a big part of training for a marathon, but beyond this, you also need some strengthening session that will help you become a better runner, but also prevent injuries. And even beyond that, you need to practice fueling, you need to think about your gear, practice with your gear. And these little things may not seem as important as running itself, but will actually have a pretty high impact. Another important thing that I wish people had told me before I got into running is that it's perfectly okay to not always be running. It's okay to have cycle of running, walking, especially the hills. It's very normal, especially in longer distance. If you do a 200 miler, you're going to have a lot of walking in that. But even for smaller distance, if you're doing your first 5K, your first 10K, it's okay and it's normal and no one will judge you for including some walking. And even in training, you don't always have to be running. And in fact, a common mistake is that a lot of people really only have one speed in training, and it's kind of fast but kind of not fast. And the best thing to do to improve your training plan and how you're training is that you will reserve a lot of your training miles or a lot of your training kilometers into slower run. We talk about zone 2. I have a video about how to have long runs. That's really the goal. 80% of your distance that you're training, you go slow so that you're able to go further. And that's one of the important goals. You're not aiming just for a short distance, you're aiming for a long distance for you, whatever that goal is. And you will also reserve 20% of your mileage or distance that will be higher intensity. We're talking about threshold run, tempo run, interval, hill training, anything that gets your heart rate really high. But you'll have to be vigilant about that, both about the longer distance run that are slower pace, but also your high intensity, high impact run. You really have to learn to listen to your body. Again, if we go back to kind of this mindset with a lot of influencer denying the fact that they feel pain and they're so tough and they're so amazing, I think one of the important lessons that you learn eventually, and hopefully you don't learn it the bad way, is that, and making the distinction between pain discomfort and pain injury is so important. Am I just sore right now because I'm running fast and my muscle are just a little bit tired and it's lactic acid? What about this pain that I feel in my knee or my ankle? And These things sometimes won't necessarily be more painful than the discomfort, but it's a different kind of pain. And the more experience you have, the better you'll become at recognizing when it's really time to slow down, potentially take some rest, take a few weeks of no running at all to get better sooner. Denying that we have physical body with physical limitation and that injuries exist is a great way to not have a sustainable career. I mean, I put quotation mark here, but career as a runner. Listening to your body will be the long-term solution for sustainability, reaching your goal and being able to enjoy the sport as long as possible. I wish I knew that injuries are unfortunately very common in running. And denying that this is a common thing will actually prevent you from doing the right thing to not have injuries and be vigilant about it. And then that's where you have denial about resting or these things. Injuries are common and you need to take that seriously so that it won't affect you as much. And there's definitely things that you can do to reduce your risk of injury. One of them is to have a smart training plan where you start from where you are right now in terms of fitness. You set yourself some ambitious goals, but not too ambitious. Goals that you can reach slowly. You will increase your mileage weekly slowly. You will increase the distance of your long run slowly. You will increase the pace, but slowly. You're smart about the effort that you're putting in. You're able to distinguish between discomfort and potential injury. And when it's discomfort, yes, you push through that so that you have a good workout. But when it's potentially injury, you dial it down, you take care of yourself, and you come back another day. Another important aspect to limit the risk of injury is to take seriously everything beyond just running itself. So having a warm-up before doing an interval session, having a cool down after an interval session, making sure that you have appropriate shoes that are not too old, making sure that you have a good running form, including strengthening session in your training plan, not just running all the time. And the last piece is to not neglect rest. That being said, something I wish I knew before, especially now that I'm getting into longer races, 200 mile and more, is that the longer the distance, the less it's about being fit or about physical property, and the more it becomes about what's in your head. It becomes imperative to have the ability to go through that pain, discomfort, to be able to convince yourself to never give up, to find solution, to not fall into despair when everything goes wrong, when you're sick or something like that. Be able to reassess the situation, find a solution, and find a way to keep going. And no matter how fit you are, if you're running a marathon, you're going to be tired. If you're running a 100 mile, you're going to be tired, right? It's totally normal. And then this ability to push beyond that limit becomes extremely important. Of course, I'm not denying the importance of the physical aspect and the fitness aspect, but it will not by itself be sufficient to bring you to that finish line and achieve your goal. So you really need to practice your mind game, your mental game, to be able to face adversity. The final thing I wish people had told me before I got into long distance running is that fueling is so important. The longer the distance, the more important fueling becomes, and it makes a huge difference, both in training, during the run, during a race, but also in between training. Eating appropriately will be very important. Fueling is the difference between not being able to finish a race and doing a PR. It's a huge difference, and you should not neglect the importance of that, but also you should not underestimate how difficult it can be to get it right. It will come through training. You can increase your tolerance to carbs, the amount of carbs that you take per hour, to be able to reach that level that you will need to sustain a certain pace for a certain amount of time. So practice and training. On race day, you will have your strategy. Do that, and once things get a little bit problematic, be able to problem solve, which was one of the first things that we talked about, find solution, but you gotta keep fueling, because if you stop fueling in 10 or 20 mile, you won't be able to keep going, or definitely you won't be able to run anymore. And that's it, folks. 7 things I wish I knew before I got into long distance ultramarathon running. Basically, running is for everyone. You are welcome to run. You can be a runner. Everyone can do it. But even though it's easy to get into running, mastering it will take a lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of practice, a lot of trial and error. One of the things that you can do to improve as a runner is to structure your training smartly. Include all of the key elements, which of course means long runs, but also shorter run that will be high intensity. You'll have some strength session and some rest. Take some rest, it is very important. If you struggle at making a smart training plan, you can hire a coach, someone with experience. You can also interact with a lot of different runners that have experience. Most people are happy to help you in your journey. That's what I'm doing with these videos. I take a lot of time doing that because I want you to be successful out there. I want you to have the same joy that I experienced on trail. So hopefully these tips are helpful. If you appreciate this video, please leave a thumbs up, a comment below, share with your friends, and see you next time.